желание лестрой. Пошучу порой я свой на этом празднике. Наливай бортовой. Делами танцпол кишит, и между нами будто искрит. А мы на баре с пацанами кому-либо наливаем. Налетай, пока горит, кому не лень. Поднимаем руки, суки, все сюда. Солнце погасло и пропало, тень уснули города. Но в этом океане мы до утра тусим. Хватило бы сил. Отхожу к тебе, чтобы спросить. Ты мне дашь, ну вот ты мне дашь. Ты мне.
Alright, now, but shits and giggles aside, the SoundLink Mini is one of the best speakers I've ever heard, best portable speakers. However, right, the problem I'm having with it is it's simply not suited for my application, right? So the SoundLink Mini has a very bass-heavy profile, equalizer profile, built into the CSR chip they're using, and the problem is I also on my phone, right, have a pretty bass-heavy equalizer, and it would mean that every time I want to play on the SoundLink Mini, I would have to change the equalizer, and also flat doesn't cut it for me. So flat plus the SoundLink Mini doesn't work fine, so I always, right, it's a pain in the ass, so I end up not using it that much. So actually, since I've built this one, basically completely ignored the SoundLink Mini, right? That doesn't mean it's not better than this, right? It is better than this, it is more than this. Just the fact that the equalizer is so heavy in my case makes it quite unappealing. So with the case on this, I went with a super rough and ready approach, so absolutely no sanding. I do get splinters from this, hoping that will stop eventually. No sanding of the edges, no attention to actual seams and stuff. So I do have one which I've sanded, painted, varnished and all of that, and I want this to be a bit more, right, catch stains and stuff. I'm thinking of in the future maybe covering up the speakers and just splashing some color on it, so stuff like this, right? That's why it's looking so rough and ready. And the glue spots, the silicone spots, these will go away because you can actually rub them off, right? So the silicone doesn't stick super well to this surface. Anyway, it still makes a super solid enclosure, right? So absolutely no give and no problems on that. So yeah, let's go quickly over some stuff about the speaker, and then after that we'll cut back in time, and I'll go over how I've built it, because right, this is a kit I bought from Jokubas from Aukits. Good friend of mine. I actually didn't buy it. He actually sent it over. I did buy something else from him though. That's coming in a future video. Anyway, so he sent this over, and I had, yeah, mediocre hopes for it because I do have a very similar one, and I'm very happy with it. Right, I was surprised, and so yeah, I did make some changes, right? So he recommend in his video, like he's gonna update. He wires the LED directly. I also added some buttons, wired the LED to the CSR board, changed the volume, the startup tones. So this is how mine sounds, right, when you start it up. Right, so the first tone was it booting up, and then the second tone was it connecting to the phone I'm recording on, actually. Hoping that didn't fuck up the sound or anything. And yeah, so mainly I want to give a shout out to Jokubas for equalizing this stuff. It is beautiful. You can pump up the volume all the way. The speakers are perfectly matched to the enclosure, the EQ setting, everything. I'm just very impressed. I've tried to do this on the previous similar speaker I've had and failed miserably, so yeah. Yeah, so let's just cut to the build video. And alright, so today's yesterday, or knowing myself, probably 5 weeks ago or so. Having a nice cup of Java, and I have yet to glue together the aukits one, and so it just comes apart magically like this. So as I've probably mentioned in the video I have yet to make at this point, I have undergone I've strayed away from the recommendations Jokubas made, a slight bit. So I've still added the weights, right? That's still something I'm pretty sure he recommends, and it's pretty crucial, right? So I have, I think, 240 grams. So each of these I think is 60. You could just glue them together with hot snot, but be sure to perhaps maybe also heat these up a bit so that they really stick, because these have a huge thermal mass and you might have a problem at the contact, at the interface between the hot snot and the metal. But so far these I've never had problems with these. Keep in mind that if you will be at the beach, right, in scorching hot sun, this will soften enough for these to melt away, right? So maybe also add a bit of sanitary silicone, right? Something like this, which I might actually do after this video now that I've thought about it for the first time. Just to make sure, right, that they won't move around, right? The sanitary silicone, we'll go over it a bit and we'll talk about it in a bit. But this is pretty cool shit. This is not temperature affected, not affected by temperature, at least the shit that humans would be around. And yeah, pretty cool, and also hardens rubbery. So anyway, the two drivers are also connected to one of these JST connectors, I think they're called, and I've also made an effort to put everything on this side of the case, and also added this JST connector here. Now the beautiful thing is it does actually line up with the pins on the CSR board, on the amp board. However, one thing that you have to watch out, right? Make sure to solder all of these connection points on both sides, right? So that you make sure that there's a kind of a mushroom style formation of solder, right? So that you can't, like, by pulling on this, can't actually rip the pads off and stuff, right? Because if you just if you just solder from this, I don't know why I keep saying actuate. If you just solder on this side, right, it sometimes does go through the via and also cover the pad on the other side, but oftentimes it does not. So it actually pays to go over with the soldering iron on both sides, right? And then you get a pretty solid connection. We'll go over the rest once we're done with the main case. I'm weird, right? And so I didn't use for this, I've actually glued a separate wooden speaker together, actually a few, with wood glue, and that is super good. It's incredibly strong and stuff. It actually pays to slightly sand down this charred section because because this is just, right, I've cleaned it and sanded it a bit, right? But initially it's just a layer of chalk, kind of a layer of not chalk, how would you call it, coal, right? Like fine coal dust, right? And that obviously prevents the glue from actually adhering to the actual glue, right? So given that I like this sanitary silicone shit so much, I've actually glued the whole thing with sanitary silicone. I don't necessarily recommend it. There aren't really any advantages as far as I can tell, right? It's definitely a bit flexible. So like dropping it would probably, yeah, I don't know, but wood glue hardens and makes such a strong bond that the wood would break next to the seal, to the joint actually. So, I mean, there's really no need. And I've also went ahead and did another round of sanitary silicone on the inside. So this you might actually do, right? Glue the shit with wood glue and then go around and just add a layer of sanitary silicone. Make sure you let this dry and make sure you get the stuff that smells like vinegar, right? So the acid curing one, because that sticks to shit a lot better and cures a bit faster. The speakers I've also put in place with sanitary silicone. You can see the slight bits showing, right? And yeah, so this is fine. However, I got massively punked and also glued this with sanitary silicone, the passive radiator. However, it does not stick to this rubber at all. So there's some, for example, the plastic that the syringe is made of, it doesn't stick to the rubber the plunger is made of, it does stick to. To the rubber this is made of, it does not stick to, right? And luckily I hadn't closed it, right? All of a sudden I was just playing with it and boom, it went in. Fuck. And so yeah, so basically what I did is scratched the inner side, so this side, so it has a lip that's kind of like yay big. So I scratched that with like one of those, how do you call it? One of those Dremel bits that that the dentists have as well, right? To chew through stuff, right? I have no idea like how you call that in English at the moment, sorry. Anyhow, and then I continued with a very generous layer of epoxy, and this looks actually very sexy. So I'm very proud how this came out about how this came out, and I'm proud about. I'm not sure you can be proud of how this turned out. And so anyway, this is pretty cool. This is all settled, and now we can move over to the electronics. So keep in mind, this is like a 2-afternoon project, or if you're really hardcore, like an afternoon and a night, right? So don't expect this to be done in half a day and stuff like that. But it is incredibly enjoyable, right? So definitely recommend it to everyone who has fun, like tinkering and stuff, or wants to get into electronics, right? Because the beautiful thing about this is you can buy these parts separately. So if you, for example, fuck up the board you get from Jokubas, you could buy another one for $10. Right, the astute amongst you will think, well, why can't I buy the whole shit? And you can, right? You could definitely like circumvent aukits completely, but I have no idea how he gets the shit this cheaply. He doesn't tell me. He won't tell me. I've known the guy for like 2-3 years. Won't tell me, and so I can't tell you. I wouldn't anyway. I don't think. Although who knows? I'm a piece of shit anyway. Case in point, like you can't get this for the price he sells it at. So I won't say the exact price because he might want to change it because of market fluctuations, time constraints, what have you. But at the time, right, cutting this without having like this super ridiculously cheap cutting facility that he has access to, getting the drivers and being sure that they're the correct type. Because keep in mind, in China, they have like 50 bajillion clones of clones. And so they obviously don't all sound the same. So you could just have like be shit out of luck and just get like some shitty drivers. The passives, I've also talked to him about this. Like most are fine, but some aren't, right? So you're just risking a lot. And I think you could. So if you would buy all the parts separately, I think you could save $10 to $20, right? At most. But I don't think you can save 20, right? Especially if you include the wood case, right? The problem is, right, you'll get the stuff, you must get the stuff from China, otherwise you won't have the cost benefit, and all the shit will come in like 2 months or some stuff, right, and come into, like, not all at once and stuff. So yeah, anyway, right, so I am saying that you could get into this as a noob, fuck shit up and still fix it, and still have it not be a problem. You'd also be motivated to actually make it, because the end product is an actual cool speaker, not some weird demo that this course on Instructables or Skillshare or whatever, like these classes and stuff, show you to do, right? So this stuff really will keep you going, because at the end of the day, you will have something and people will ask and you will brag about it, right? So just a little motivation and commercial for this stuff. So basically we have the CSR module, not a lot going on. So Jokubas will give you a capacitor. Best thing to do is connect this as close as possible. Let me actually zoom in. As close as possible to the board, right? The considerations behind this are beyond the scope of this video, but what you want is to get this as close to the actual amplifier chips, which are on the back, as possible, right? So I just soldered them on like this, and then soldered on the wires from the battery, right? So one of these wires is the plus. You can see it goes, where the hell does it go? Oh, you can see it goes all the way to the booster chip. The negative is irrelevant. So the negative you don't actually have to take from the booster chip, because it's actually a link, right? So the booster only acts on the positive side, right? So this pad is linked to this pad. So I didn't use it, right? But you can. So he has the schematics and the wiring over there. That's not important. Then also I want to talk a bit about this TP4056 charger board. So you will have to scorch, to score some grooves in the wood to get the connector a bit closer to the edge, right? So that's also not a big deal, but keep in mind you have to do this. And do try to see if the connector gets all the way through before actually gluing it in place, right? Then I also want to talk about the way this works, right? So this is a resistive type voltage converter, let's call it, right? So to charge the battery, right, this ranges from 2.5, let's say, to 4.2 volts, and you feed it in 5 volts, right? So the delta, right, the difference in voltage, it actually burns off, right? So unlike this converter, which takes the 2.5 to 4.2 and boosts it up to 6.5, this does not burn anything, right? Obviously it can't because it has to make more. But this is a switching converter and these are way more efficient than the linear ones. Case in point, this gets hot. And hot snot gets soft when it's hot, right? So I actually don't think he mentioned this. So what I also did and what I would recommend you do is find a piece of metal. It could even be copper or steel or aluminum. Just have it be metal, right? I hope you can see it. And use some, you could either use sanitary silicone because this doesn't get affected by temperature, or a high temperature epoxy. So the shitty shit from China, the transparent crap for $4 a tube, that will also get super soft because this gets up to like 80 degrees, like 50, 60, 80. If it's a hot day, it will get to 80, 90, no problem, right? And so get an epoxy that you know or someone told you does not soften under heat. Weld, technically, this piece of metal and have it so what happens here is it comes out as an L, right? So it goes as an L, and even if this melts and loses grip, right, the TP4056 board will still be held in, right, and won't wiggle around, right? Because the worst case scenario that could happen with this is you charge for half an hour or an hour, have everything be super hot, pull out, right? So you pull out early, right? Just how you do with the chicks, what? And now use condoms though. Like I'm sorry for that. Just play it safe. And yeah, I'm nailing this. And then you go to plug it back in, right? And then the shit is soft, so it'll fall inside, and then you've glued the whole thing together. You have to cut it. So it's a pain in the ass. So to avoid that, make sure you have this little metal bracket type arrangement. Then you wire the booster converter. This is all explained in Jokubas' video. It's super straightforward, so no problems like that. No problems on that front. You wire the switch in. With the switch, there's a very, very important consideration. You have to tape the edges of the switch, because otherwise when you'll pour hot snot, it'll actually melt in this opening, right? And you won't be able to use the switch. It's disastrous. I've done it the first time. Don't do it. I actually get some coffee going. That's pretty good. All right, what else have I done? So another thing I've done is I have not wired the LED directly to the power rail. So the way he suggests it is basically whenever the speaker is on, the LED will be on. Whenever the speaker is off, the LED will be off. That's decent, right? That's a decent approach. However, you can do better. So what I've done in this case, you can see the LED wires are these, right? So the yellow and the blue ones. The yellow one goes to, actually I have to bring another module to show you guys this, so give me a sec. Alright, so unfortunately I don't have a 5+5 watt board. I will actually order one just now. However, on the back, the setup will look similar to this. This is a, what is this? What is this? I think it's an 8675 breakout. So this is Bluetooth 5.0. This is pretty schmick stuff. Anyway, but on the back, you'll have this arrangement, right? So the positive end of the LEDs will be hooked together and going to a resistor. And then this resistor will just go to the positive rail of the whole module, which is 3.3 volts, right? You can see it. It's coming. It's 5 volts is getting into this. 3.3 is going out. It's branching out to the module and is going via this resistor to the LEDs. So your LED positive will have to be linked after this resistor. So you could just link it onto these LEDs, even on both, so you can get a strong connection. If you fuck them up, it's not really a problem because you won't see them. And then on the other side, right, on the flip side, you will have to use this connection. And this, I think, is LED 1. This, I think, is LED 0. This is LED 1. So if Jokubas will supply the custom ROM, custom PSR settings file that I've generated. And so you'll want to get this LED connected. And basically this pin pulls the LED down to 0 when the LED is supposed to be on and leaves it floating when it's supposed to be off, right? And so like this, I get more information out of the LED. For example, you start it up. This is the ones. Now it's actually connected. Or is it? Why is it blinking? Anyway, it's fully on, so that means it has connected to the phone I'm recording with. And I do have a reset button. We'll get to the buttons in a bit. And you can reset it and it goes over the startup routine again. Because otherwise you have to toggle the power on and off, and that's pretty cumbersome, right? One button is a lot nicer. Anyway, so LEDs out of the way. I found that the LED does not need any glue, or I think I maybe doused a tiny amount of sanitary silicone. Again, I'm crazy about this shit. And yeah, this is how you get a more dynamic LED. And then the last thing, I want to talk about, are the buttons. So I'll insert a picture of how this looked initially. So you just pop in the buttons, right? These are 2 millimeters with, I think, pretty long shafts, right? So 6.5 millimeters. I mean, it's long in button terms. I'm not saying anyway. And so what I did is made some clear epoxy, let it cure for a tiny bit until it gets rather viscous, because the first time I've done it, which is when I took this picture that you're seeing now, it actually was so liquid that it actually, through the capillary action, seeped its way into the actual hole and prevented the buttons from clicking. They were super mushy, so I had to take them out. That was a pain in the ass. So make your epoxy, let it set for a tiny amount, and then apply it, right? Just with a screwdriver, some stuff, you guys will figure it out. All right, let that dry, and then you can solder. Now I think we can come back to the video. And then you can solder. What I've used is magnet wire, but again, you could just use any wire, right? This is rather tedious. I can see how a lot of people would say, oh yeah, shit, I don't need this. Like, why would you have this? Like, trust me, you need this. I need this. We all need this, right? It's mind-blowingly useful to be able to take your speaker with you, not have your phone, right? You're in your room, you just change like positions, just go to a different desk or some shit. You bring your speaker with you, you want to change the song, turn it up or down, right? And you just have the buttons. And these are sexy as fuck, man. Check this shit out. Right, just super nice, right? The gold fits the mahogany super well. I think it's mahogany. Fits the mahogany super well. They're super clicky. And so the way I program these, this is volume down. This is volume up. This is play pause. It really wants to focus on the coffee. This is play pause. So single click is play pause. Double click is next. Triple click is previous. Long, super, it's called very, very long click. is reset the pairing list, and just long press is enter pairing mode. So that way you can actually connect two phones to the same speaker, right? And once you hit pause and the other guy hits play, he can seamlessly stream to the speaker, and when you turn it on, it will connect to both of the last available phones, devices. And yeah, so basically you solder on the magnet wire, and then you make sure you really seal everything in with hot snot, and that worked super fine in my case. The reset button uses a negative, so I scraped a tiny amount of solder resist off of this area. Be careful, this is positive, so this might look like a ground, but this is actually positive, so don't do this, you will fuck up your board. So make sure you're getting for the reset switch, you're getting the negative from an actual ground point, and then you have to take it to what I believe is the third connection over here. Yeah, it is. So right on the edge, so 1, 2, 3 is the reset pin, and it is active low, right? So you pull it. The data sheet says you pull it low for 50 milliseconds or more, so any press is gonna do basically, and it resets the chip. All right. The other buttons, you need to take a wire. Man, you need to. It's still better than on Abe's channel though. I will say, right? This iPhone 8 has pretty good focus. I mean, check this shit out. This is pretty good. Anyway. So you take the buttons, right? We are using volume plus, volume negative. Previous and next are redundant because you could use the play button, and then all of them, right? The other side of the switch has to be connected to this COM pin, which is actually the internally generated 1.8 volt supply line, voltage line. And I think... Also, another consideration, make sure you secure all the wires in place. So this will be vibrating quite a bit. And if this, for example, would not be here, maybe one of the wires would start resonating, right? With one song or multiple songs, right? And eventually you will, or you travel with a car, especially with a car or on a plane. And these shits will snap off eventually, right? If you have this much movement, right? So just slightly moves, right? With the resin, it resonates with the vibration mode that it's subjected to, right? Eventually, right? Copper work hardens and it will snap off, right? And again, then it's a pain in the ass because you have to open the thing up. I will also be gluing it with sanitary silicone because the advantage of that is you can simply slice through it, right? It's a lot more reworkable than doing this with wood glue. So I would recommend wood glue on the front and sanitary silicone on the back. That's a pretty good hybrid approach. And apart from that, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I've also changed the startup sounds and stuff. So this will all be in the custom PSR I'll link to in the video, and I'm pretty sure Jokubas will also integrate it into his future modules. Yeah, what else can I say about this? I've also boosted the gain for the microphone, so now it sounds super good. So I've asked people, yo, anything up? Like, can you hear yourself? Can you hear me weirdly? And I've really gotten no complaints. So basically, I use this and the SoundLink Mini whenever I have to have a longer conversation. Highly recommend you get this shit. Like, it's amazing, right? Yeah, so I think that's pretty much all of it. If I've missed anything in the description or in this video, do ask it down in the comments. I reply to pretty much everything. And yeah, have a good one, guys.